Hello and welcome to the Aid Station. I'm Chris Robb, and today we travel to Tuscany in Italy to meet Lidia Fluhme, the co-founder and president of GFNY. Hi Lydia, great to meet you.
Hi. Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. I love what you are doing with this podcast. I've watched many episodes and I find it so inspiring. And thank you for doing this and really bringing the endurance sport community together. And I love to hear other stories. So it's been really a great daily video that I get to watch. Thank you.
Oh, that's so great, and it's great for us to finally connect because we've been exchanging emails. We've tried to catch up in Bali before, and it's wonderful to meet, albeit virtually. And you've got an amazing story. I'm so excited to hear it, and I think you're going to inspire many of the viewers. I mean, I'm sure you're going to tell us about the GFNY story, but 22 events in 17 countries is an incredible experience. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your story, please, Lydia?
Definitely. Thank you. I've been an athlete all my life. I started when I was 12 years old running. At 22, I did my first duathlon in 2003. Right after that, I did my first triathlon and I was hooked. I was racing every chance I got. I got to travel the world doing races as well. So I got to combine my passion for travel as well as doing sport at the same time. I've been to 60 countries by the time I was 27. Um, and at the same time I was working on Wall Street, I didn't find that to be fulfilling. I would just sit there for hours and be like, where is this going? And this is not what I meant to be doing at 9 p.m. looking at a presentation that doesn't make anybody's life better at the end of the day. And I thought I should continue in finance, but get a different job. I went to business school. I went to NYU. Halfway through, I left the finance track and I went for the entrepreneurial track. And after business school, I joined a holdings company and I was COO. I learned a lot about creating companies, starting companies, operating companies, growing them. And at that point, my now husband said, let's go to Italy, we'll do a Gran Fondo. And we did that. It was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And at that time, I'd already done like 16, 17 Ironmans.
Wow.
And I was just madly in love with Gran Fondo. We as endurance athletes, we love the challenge. And I knew that this is something that I wanted to pursue. And hey, New York has a marathon, New York has a triathlon, swimming events. Why is there no cycling marathon? So the week after we were back in New York, I quit my job. I started trying to get permits and see if doing Gran Fondo New York would be possible. And as soon as I had enough of the permits lined up and knew that we can open registration and this race would happen, my husband left his job as well and joined me in working for GFNY and preparing it. He's been elite cyclist and pro triathlete as well. So he's also had this passion for sport and immense knowledge in the sport and also the travel. So we had this like perfect fit. He also wasn't working on Wall Street. He was a lawyer. So for him also that job, Wall Street lawyer was not as fulfilling either. So we finally found this passion and purpose in what we were doing. And we love what we do. I mean, even still to this day, it never feels like work because we love it so much. And so 3 years in, I mean, we always, from the first edition of our race, Gran Fondo New York, have gotten requests like, can we do this again next weekend? I want to do this. I'm like, I haven't slept. We cannot do this next weekend. We can do this next year. And then over time, there were also organizers who said, we want to do what you do where we are. And people started coming to us and we said, okay, well, there is NYU in Florence, there's an NYU in Abu Dhabi. why can't there be a GFNY in another place? So we took the word Gran Fondo New York, put it into GFNY, made that as our brand, and expanded it to races around the world. We work with amazing organizers who are very much passionate athletes in other places of the world, and we work on basically like having a similar experience everywhere in the world, which our athletes love, and they love to travel to our races because they know that they can trust GFNY, that they'll have a good experience, it will be well organized. And it's been an amazing 10 years that we've been doing this. We're 10 years in. I started GFNY when I was 29, and I think it was the best thing that I could have done.
Wow, what an incredible story, incredibly inspiring. And we were talking before we started recording that of your 22 races this year, you think there might be 6 or 7 that might take place. What's life been like for you over the last the last few months? You've been in Italy, and obviously the lockdown there has been fairly strict. You were saying things have really opened up. You can do whatever you like. But what's it been like living through that, knowing that these races may or may not happen, and what have been some of your biggest challenges in that period of time?
Well, it's funny because COVID hasn't, unlike a daily work life, has not changed my life at all. 10 years ago when we started GFNY, it was work from our living room, which still remains to this day. We work wherever we are, whether it's on a plane, traveling somewhere, or being here in a living room, anywhere, in any rental place. So this has given us flexibility to continue working as usual. We have a lot of people we work with who are just remote workers all over the world. And this part hasn't changed. So for us, there has not been a transition whatsoever. I'm still having my very short commute, just, a few steps, and it hasn't changed. And also, the people that we work with, they are working still full time. What I really appreciate is that they have, when we're producing events, they have roles, and those are the roles they do. That's what we hired them for. And obviously, when we don't have races anymore, we have to shift and figure out, okay, we're busy, but we have to find like what should we occupy the people with. And we just said we can grow in these ways. For example, we've took this time to redevelop a lot of our technology aspects. So we've shifted, and we really appreciate our team who has been able to shift from the roles they had been doing and say, okay, now I'm needed somewhere else, and taken their abilities and applied them to other roles. So that has been great. And from working with our other organizers around the world, we talk to them constantly. We're looking at evaluating what is the virus doing, what kind of travel restrictions are there, is the government going to be canceling all the races, or is the government actually allowing them and saying, look, you have to social distance? So trying to understand what are the government guidelines to be able to produce races or not. And obviously when things are really bad and you gotta postpone a race, working with the host location, coming up with a new date. There's so much that goes into establishing a new date. There's already been fall events in many of our destinations. So for spring races, for example, so that March event, for example, GFNY Italia, we said we can do in October. Here are the 5 days we can do in September and October, and they just said we already have events on those days. So we try to make it work. We try to do everything from our side. They also try to see, like, can they pull resources from other events to make GFNY Italia happen? And unfortunately, they just said, we just don't have the people, we don't have the capacity. It will have to be next year, March. For our GFNY World Championship in New York City, It's an extremely complex race. It goes through 2 states, 2 counties, 13 towns, 2 different parks. And already from the get-go, just as we had postponed Italia, we also knew, everything that happens in New York City. It's an extremely busy place. Every weekend is packed. And we just said, there is no chance that we can find a fall date. It's just going to be May next year. People know that it's GFNY is the third Sunday in May, and that's what we're going to do.
Wow. And how's the reaction to the participants been? They've been pretty supportive and understanding in that situation?
Yeah, this has been probably the most surprising thing for us, is how supportive the people have been. Our riders, they really love what we have, put on for them, what we've created with GFNY. We give them, the goal in life to keep training, to do the race, and to have, like, goals that they can train for. And I think it's been really amazing how they are so passionate. And we see on social media, people are posting wearing their GFY jerseys, training and being like, I'm going to be in New York next year, or, like, I still have these races, and you guys, sending support. So this has been, we've been amazed at this.
That's so wonderful. And so, I mean, lots of leadership in that. You and your husband leading the organization, people around the world in terms of partners delivering. Are there any kind of key leadership tips that you've either learned or you've applied in this situation that you'd like to share with people that are watching?
I think have to be flexible and communicate, and do it in advance. I've seen events that just don't give updates, or they just don't say anything, and people are wondering, and then people get upset. And I think, while maybe we were, for example, with New York, a bit too early, because the virus had not spread to the Americas to the point that we had experienced it in Europe at that time. So the people in the Americas were like, this is coming out of nowhere. Why would you cancel an event in New York in 2 months when, we just have a few cases, and, it's really just an Asian and a European thing right now. And, we looked at the situation and we understood, and we wanted to give as much time for people to change their travel plans, to cancel, to, be prepared that this amazing day that they've been training and waiting for is not going to be taking place in May. So I think just communication is probably the most important thing, because if you can manage people's expectations and keep them informed of what's happening, what you can and cannot offer to people, even, sometimes saying no is not easy. But you have to sometimes say it. People appreciate an answer, even if it's no. No, unfortunately, the race is not going to happen this year, but don't worry, your ticket is valid. It will be for next year.
Yeah, and look, I think that that one of the other things that comes out of this is decisiveness. I've seen making that decision early. It must have been, whilst in many ways challenging, this relief to say we've made a decision, we know what we're dealing with, as opposed to so many people that are still in situations. I mean, there's so many big events at the moment that every week or every couple of weeks they're communicating amazingly, but they've got this stress. Big events like London Marathon, Chicago Marathon, obviously New York announced this week that they're cancelled, but the stress that those organizers must be under, not knowing all this work that they're doing. So it must have been a massive relief to say, we've made the decision, we start looking forward. Yeah, no, that's...
it was, for us, the days leading up to it, we were actually spending half our time looking at the situation, at the spread, what's happening, and also fielding lots and lots of questions from riders. Did you see this? I'm coming from Europe to New York. Is the race taking place? And it was a relief. It was a heartbreak, obviously. It was, I mean, it was a horrible heartbreak to have to postpone. It was also a big lesson to learn, because we do have 22 races. So this kind of also helped, explain
The other races, yeah.
the other races and why how we communicate. We have a great technology platform behind us. So communicating with our riders, sending out new tickets with the new date reflected, all of this is at a click of a button. So this part has been great, that we've had this investment in technology that does enable this smooth communication and seamless experience to our riders. They all have their GFNY accounts, and they can go in and see, oh yes, my new ticket is updated, it's for this new edition. So even in this respect, with thousands of people around the world who are participating in races that have changed dates, we've had very little impact in terms of like, what is my ticket? What do I do? Where do I find this? Because we already have the technology platform underneath us to assist with this.
Fantastic. I always love to end with something inspiring. I'm sure you're an incredibly inspiring story yourself, and I'm sure you've inspired many people, but a story that you'd like to leave us with, of something that's inspired you, or an inspiring message?
I think we are endurance athletes. We love the challenge, and we will overcome this. We are driven people. The thing that keeps me going is always looking at tomorrow. As an athlete, I've always been like, what can I do today to be the best athlete I can be tomorrow? And I think in this time is similar. You have to look at today and what you're doing and focus on where that will get you for tomorrow.
Wow, that's a really great. What can I do today to be the best athlete tomorrow? That's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much, Lidia. Really great to meet you and to talk. Congrats on your amazing story. And hopefully next year it's a calendar full of 22 events, and one of those is here in Bali and we get to meet up, or even more.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Bye.